Starting off this countdown, we have the Crescent Hotel. In 1936, Norman G. Baker, a millionaire inventor, turned a hotel into a hospital and posed as a doctor. He claimed that he had a cure for cancer. As a result, he had numerous patients and became super wealthy. He claimed that using aluminum products caused cancer, and that the only way to cure it was through his made-up drug, which was a mixture of alcohol, glycerin, carbolic acid mixed with tea from watermelon seeds, brown corn silk, and clover leaves. As a result, many of the people he treated ended up dying. Now, people don't know what his intentions were. Did he truly believe that he had a cure, or was this all just a ploy to take advantage of vulnerable people? I should also mention that he was obsessed with the color purple. As a result, he would always dress in purple, he drove a purple car, and the hospital walls were painted purple, and he even had a purple chimney. So I'm thinking, a movie about a loony doctor that tricks individuals into thinking that they have some sort of new made-up disease. Meanwhile, in reality, they are actually healthy. Maybe he slowly gives them medication or some sort of drug that's supposed to help them, but it actually makes them feel sick and gives them symptoms of this disease. Then he tricks these individuals into staying at his house, only to find out that he's experimenting on and torturing patients. $1 million idea right there. Wow. In our 9th spot, we have the text from the afterlife. This story was shared by the Reddit user named Ledger Domain. He claimed that his new partner would receive text from her deceased son. In the post, he claims that she would get a text from him at least once a week, but her son's phone was in a drawer at his sister's house. It no longer had a SIM card and it wasn't working. He also said that she would receive the text when she was feeling down. The text would say things along the lines of, "I love you, see you soon." Now, some people commented on the post saying that a text saying "see you soon" seems pretty sinister, and people thought that it may not be from her son, but a dark spirit. So, what if we had a movie about a grieving mother who thinks she's in touch with her son, but instead is being haunted by an evil spirit, posing as her son? Maybe instead this spirit gets her to do extreme tasks like harm others or herself. I think there's probably a movie out there that's similar to this concept, but it's still a good premise. Coming in at number 8, we have The Boarding School Ghost. In this next story, a man claims that his old boarding school in London was haunted by a young boy. When he was just 8 years old, he left his lunchbox in the lunch hall. As a result, he went back down to the now empty hall to get it, but something strange happened. The wooden door slammed shut behind him, and he felt a cool breeze by his side. That's when he saw a shadow of a small boy beside him. All the boy did was point to one of the benches. The man went to the bench, and it had the name Charles carved into it. So, who is Charles? In the movie, maybe he was a kid that was picked on and passed away from being hazed. Now he's back trying to get revenge. Moving on to number 7, we have the Lighthouse Keepers. In December of 1900, 3 lighthouse keepers in Flannan Islands vanished without a trace. After a ship arrived and no lighthouse keepers came out to greet them, the captain knew something was up. The lighthouse door was left unlocked. 2 jackets were missing, food was left uneaten, and a chair was knocked over. Weirdest part, the kitchen clock had stopped working. Not only that, but there were very strange entries in the lighthouse logs. It was written down that the principal lighthouse keeper, James, was oddly quiet, and that the other assistant, William, was crying. On December 15th, someone wrote, "A storm ended, sea calm. God is over all." But there were no reported storms in the area until December 17th. It is theorized that the staff tried to retrieve fallen ropes when a wave washed them out to sea. But why would one man not wear his coat while doing this task when it was freezing out? Also, people don't buy this theory because they are very experienced men. Other people think that they were killed or kidnapped by aliens. Another great mystery that would make a great premise for a movie. Making our way down the list, at number 6, we have Room 1046. Another case that I wish I had the answers to. On January 2nd, 1935, a man that went by the name of Roland T. Owen checked into the President Hotel in Kansas City. He was described as being 20 to 35 in age, nicely dressed with brown hair and a scar on his scalp above his ear. Bellhop noted that he only was traveling with a comb and a toothbrush. Over the course of his stay, strange incidents occurred, such as Owen locking the door from the inside and sitting in the room in complete darkness, or him being visited by a man he called Don. One time, the maid, Mary Soptic, went to clean his room and Owen was just sitting there in the dark. The phone rang during this time and she heard him say, and I quote, "No, Dawn, I don't want to eat. I am not hungry. I just had breakfast." After a moment, he repeated, "No, I am not hungry." Well, people theorized that this was his way of saying, "I can't talk right now, someone's listening." Then one day, the bellhop received a call 3 different times saying that the phone in his room was off the hook for 10 minutes. He went up 3 separate times to get the phone back on the hook. The second time, he actually entered the room where he found him laying naked on the bed. He just assumed that he was drunk, and so he put the phone back on the hook and went back downstairs. Then he received another call saying that the phone was back off the hook. This time when he entered Owen's room, he found him sitting in a puddle of blood with his head in his hands. He suffered from blunt force trauma to his head and had multiple stab wounds. Owen was still conscious when detectives arrived, and when he was asked who was in the room, he said, "No one." He died shortly after arriving to the hospital. Now, this is when it gets even more strange. It is said that Owen was injured well before the bellhop first entered the room. So why didn't Owen tell him that he was hurt? Also, his clothes were missing and some other items in the hotel like the soap and toothpaste. Also, there is no record of a Roland T. Owen, it's just made up. At his funeral, money was sent in a rolled up newspaper, and someone left a bouquet of flowers and a letter that read, "Love forever, Lucille." Now, a woman did come forward claiming that he was her son, Scott Ogletree, but we still have so many unsolved questions. Who murdered him, and why? I mean, a movie could take so many different routes with the story. Maybe he was part of the mob, or maybe the movie could focus on Owen haunting all the guests of the hotel room 1046. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Girl Scout trip. So this one is a truly devastating and heartbreaking story. In 1977 in Oklahoma, 3 girls disappeared from their tent during a Girl Scout trip. These girls were Lori Farmer, age 8, Michelle Guzzi, age 9, and Denise Milner, age 10. In the morning, the counselor found the bodies of these 3 girls laying by a tree. 2 months prior, the counselor actually received a warning that this might happen. She was doing a training session when she found her cabin was broken into and someone ate a box of donuts and left some very disturbing notes. The first note had "kill" written repeatedly on it. The second said, "We are on a mission to kill 3 girls." The counselor just thought it was just a prank until it actually happened. After police investigation, they did arrest an escaped convict, but he was later found not guilty. After continuous investigations, police think that a woman could have been involved in the killing. Other evidence makes people think that 4 men were involved. But to this day, it still goes unsolved. In fact, the camp to this day still remains shut down. But for the movie, I'm thinking maybe a group of teens go to the camp to seek a paranormal thrill and then they end up being the next victims. Yes, it kind of sounds like Friday the 13th and Camp Crystal Lake, but this time it's grounded in truth. In our 4th spot, we have the kidnapping. So this next story is my own personal one. It's the time that I almost got kidnapped while on vacation. I swear this is 100% true. So basically when I was around 10 or so, my family went on a trip to Florida to go to Disney World. At around 8 at night, my older brother, who was 16 at the time, took me, my other older brother, who was 14, my older cousin, who was 11, and my younger cousin, who was 8, and we all went outside to the pool for a night swim. Well, while at the pool, me and my cousin made friends with this little girl. She was around the same age as me. Maybe she was like 9 or 8. And we were all having like little fun races and doing like somersaults and handstands in the pool. And then she randomly goes, "I want you to meet my dad." Okay, so I was a very cautious kid and my parents taught me really well about stranger danger. So I was pretty sketched out at that. So I was like, "Why?" She's like, "I want you to meet my dad." I said, "Okay, where is he?" All she did was point. But she pointed to an area that was surrounded by trees and it wasn't even lit up by the pool light. So I was like, "No." But she took my hand and was like, "My dad will love you." And then she just kept pointing where he was, but I couldn't see a man by the pool. So I swam away with my cousin, I told my brother, and we all just went back to the room. But as we were walking away, I saw the girl get out of the pool and start walking towards her dad, and I saw a shadow of a man by the trees in the darkness. So to this day, I'm convinced that this girl was trying to lure me to her dad so that he could kidnap me. Like, why on earth would he be watching his daughter from the trees at a distance and not on the pool deck with all the other parents? So this brings me to my movie idea. A movie about a man who uses his daughter to lure other kids to him. He then kidnaps them and then convinces that he's their real dad. Coming in our third spot, we have Lizzie Borden. Hold it right there. Before you comment down below, I know that there are a couple movies already out there surrounding Lizzie Borden, I know. But I'm going to provide you with an original, even spookier concept. So for those of you who don't know, in 1892, Lizzie Borden was suspected of killing her father and stepmother with an axe. In fact, there's this like really creepy nursery rhyme that goes, Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. Creepy. But we actually don't know who killed her parents. Some believe that it was Lizzie, other believes that she possibly couldn't have done it. Other people have theorized that Lizzie Borden actually had a child. So, I would love a movie surrounding that idea. If she did have a child, how she would have to try and hide and protect the baby, and how the baby grew up knowing her mother's tragic past. I want to see a movie about that. And at number 2, we have the Beaumont children. First off, I want to shout out WillBake17 who sent me this case on Instagram. Feel free to message me any cases or stories over Instagram. I'll be happy to read them. So, the disappearance of the 3 young Beaumont children remains the longest running missing persons case in Australian history. On January 26, 1966, Jane, age 9, Grant, age 7, and Arna, age 4, boarded a bus and headed to the beach. During that time, Jane was considered old enough to care for her siblings, so they went off by themselves, which they have done many times before. However, that day, they never returned home. Witnesses say that the children did make it to the beach, but that they weren't alone. Apparently, there was a tall, blonde, thin-faced man with them. Others say that it wasn't just a man, but there were actually 2 other individuals with them. Another man and then a woman in a pale blue patterned dress. The last apparent sightings were around 3 p.m. when the postman saw them walking the main road to their home, but apparently they were alone. Over the years, detectives have followed leads trying to find these children. They've done numerous excavations of different properties of suspects and leads. However, none have been successful. So, where are these children? Is it possible that they're still alive out there somewhere? Or who is the mastermind behind their potential kidnapping and murder? I think this interesting unsolved case definitely needs its own movie. And in our number 1 spot, we have the disappearance of Chris and Lizanne. This case is extremely sad, and although there are numerous theories out there, it still remains a huge mystery. On April 1st, 2014, 2 young girls named Chris Kremers and Lizanne Froon went on a hike in the Panamanian jungle. But sadly, they never made it back home. They spent 6 months planning their trip to Panama. They had planned to hike, volunteer, and teach arts and crafts to the local children. On April 1st, their dog returned to their host family's home without the girls. On April 2nd, they both missed their private walking tour. The host family alerted the authorities and an aerial search of the forest was done. Searches were conducted for weeks, but the girls were nowhere to be found. That's when their blue backpack was found along the banks of a river. In the backpack contained Lizanne's passport along with other personal belongings. Most importantly, they found their camera and cell phones. It was revealed that 77 attempts were made to call the police. The photos on the camera revealed heartbreaking evidence. It started off with the girls taking normal photos showing how excited they were on their trip. The next set of photos were taken in the dead of night on April 8th. Some were just random photos showing their surroundings. Another photo was of the back of Chris's head showing blood dripping from her temple. Other photos were just completely black, so it's theorized that they used their camera flash as a source of light. Others theorize that Lizanne was taking photos to document Chris's injuries and their location. 2 months later, a pelvic bone and a foot still inside a boot were found. Then the bones of both the women were discovered. Some say they died after getting lost in the jungle. Others theorize that they were murdered and the killer deliberately took the photos and made the phone calls to make it seem like they just got lost. Either way, I think this movie should be made from the girls' perspectives as they try and survive for days in the jungle. I could see it kind of being shot like a Blair Witch style film. And of course you can add in the element of there being a potential murderer. So that could just make it that much more terrifying.
Number 10. The Rescuers and the number 13. So, to ease into all of the scary truths, we are exploring a true fear that one of the main characters from The Rescuers has. Main Mouse Bernard has a fear of the number 13. The number 13 is commonly associated with bad luck in Western culture. When you go to a hotel, many don't have a 13th floor because they don't want to associate with bad luck. Bernard's fear is next level though, making it enough to be triskaidekaphobia. Triskaidekaphobia, to be exact. This is a written account of this fear, the number 13, dates back only to the late 1800s, but became common enough by 1911 that it got the name triskaidekaphobia by combining the Greek word for 13 with phobia, which means a fear of. All in all, our boy Bernard from The Rescuers has some strong feelings about the number 13. Do you have strong feelings about any numbers too? Any particular ones? Also, I have another truth about The Rescuers, and this one was a bit of a scandal, so grab some tea and get ready to get into it. That brings us to number 9, The Rescuers' hidden photo. Although the film came out in 1977 and was out on Laserdisc and VHS since 1992, no issue was found until 1999. The issue was with an objectionable background image about 38 minutes into the movie. This image was of a topless woman that was in 2 frames of the movie when Bianca and Bernard fly in on a sardine box on the back of Orville through the city. An important thing to note is that the frame rate for Disney movies is between 24 and 60 frames per second. So, only being visible for 2 frames means that the image was only visible for a 1/12 of a second, which is about 0.083 seconds. So, who broke the news about this if you could only find it by freeze framing at the right moment, knowing when that moment is? Disney did. That's right. They made a public statement about it, saying it must have been inserted in post-production and that they were recalling 3.4 million copies of the movie. That's a lot of VHS tapes. Could it have been a publicity stunt? I don't know. Number 8, Disney and recycling animations. This truth has been going around for a bit, but I wanted to include it because there's a bit of misinformation buzzing around it as well. If you look at the hand-drawn animated Disney movies, there can be some overlap in how some sequences turn out in the final production. For example, there's a movement in Robin Hood that looks an awful lot like some movement in Aristocats, and the dance scene in Beauty and the Beast looks the same as the one in Sleeping Beauty. This has led to a lot of outlets saying that the animators were recycling animation for either time or money, all those reasons, and they kind of jumped to conclusions in some cases, because this wasn't always the case. In 2015, on his website Geek Dad, Jim McQuarrie asked former animators on these movies what really had happened in these situations. Animator Floyd Norman said it was because of director Wolfgang "Wooly" Reitherman. According to Norman, Reitherman liked to play it safe and only use stuff he knew would work, which led to similar animation over many of the movies he directed. Also, Gary Truesdale, co-director of Beauty and the Beast, said time was the reason for the dance scene making you see double. As they were kind of cut for time, Reitherman had already made it so that using previous sequences was alright. So Truesdale said they resized and repositioned the Sleeping Beauty animation and then cleaned up the characters to make them look like the ones you see in Beauty and the Beast, and changed the colors too. This information was shocking to me, so I had to share it, and okay, I know it's not the spookiest, but the next few make up for that. Alright, that brings us to number 7, Finding Nemo and Other Lost Fish. In the movie, Nemo escapes the dentist down the toilet believing that all drains lead to the ocean, and this idea had influence. Children began flushing their fish down the toilet, believing this was true. The LA Times wrote about this and also what really happens to the fish when they are flushed down the toilet. Because no, they don't go to the ocean. First of all, most flushed fish die from trauma or shock from hitting fresh water if they're a saltwater fish. If a fish survives the swirling journey, they still won't make it to open waters though. They would end up in a sewage system where the bacteria, chemicals, and gases would poison or drown the fish with asphyxiation. But if somehow your fish was super strong somehow and they still would try, they still wouldn't make it because the only thing that makes it to open water is water. The fish would be taken out as a solid at a water treatment plant. So don't flush your fish, please, especially if they're alive. Alright, number 6, Princess and the Frog. 2 months after its release in 2010, an article came out in Metro that said young Disney fans had fallen ill after kissing frogs, like in the movie. This article was citing a salmonella outbreak in the States, but it wasn't known for certain that it was because of kissing frogs, so it's likely that this story was spun. That being said, there's truth in one part of it. Kissing frogs can give you salmonella. Amphibians are well known to carry salmonella and can give humans the infection salmonellosis from contact with them. It's advised young children don't mirror the princess and having a frog of their own because of their weakened immune systems, so just don't go around kissing frogs, cause catch a bunch of stuff. Now let's jump from frogs back to fish, or half fish, that is. Brings us to number 5, The Little Mermaid, and the Little Mermaid song that was almost cut. We all know, regardless of how much you liked it, that The Little Mermaid is a classic. The thing is, it could have been released without its iconic song, Part of Your World, and that's terrifying. In a Polygon interview with Jodie Benson, the voice of Ariel, she said that in early test screenings the song didn't perform well, which is absurd. The 4-minute song wasn't doing well with its target audience, kids. The Disney chairman at the time, Jeffrey Katzenberg, noticed kids were getting restless and distracted during the song, even throwing popcorn around, and he wanted to axe the song. What saved this beautiful song was the song's lyricist, Howard Ashman, who apparently said, "If this song goes, I go." And to that, I've gotta say, thank you, Howard Ashman, for an anthem. On to number 4, A Sleeping Beauty truth. So, The Little Mermaid came out in 1989, 30 years after the last princess movie, Sleeping Beauty. And why? Well, Sleeping Beauty wasn't the only sleeping thing with this movie. The movie originally bombed. Called a sleeper movie because of its delayed profits and possibly because it put theatergoers to sleep, the movie originally only made $5.3 million. If you're looking at me like, Abby, what about inflation? Just stop there, kid. It cost $6 million to make the movie originally, so it originally came out as a loss. Now, though, it's nearly 10 times the original $5 million with a lifetime gross of $51.6 million. So it kind of grew from there. If you ever showcase something and it's not getting stellar reviews, don't sweat it, because Sleeping Beauty, it shows. People barely remember the truth that it bombed. So don't get too worked up about your own personal failures. Now let's go to another princess with number 3, Tangled's pricey truth. Adjusted for inflation, as I talked about earlier, Sleeping Beauty cost a little over $53 million with today's valuation. And that pales in comparison with Tangled. Tangled is the most expensive animated movie Disney has ever made. It's also the most expensive animated movie of all time. It is my favorite Disney movie though, so obviously it was worth it, you know. The studio spent an estimated $260 million back in 2010 to make Tangled. That's $250 million. Also, Ranker adjusted against 2019 inflation to say that it would be equivalent to $320 million today. And it's more expensive than the Titanic to make. And Titanic the movie, not the boat, I'm not sure about that. But why was it so expensive? Some people think it's because there was storyboarding and writing dating back to 2000, 10 years before the movie's release, but there are no sure answers out there right now. The good news, though, is Disney more than doubled their profit with a gross profit of over $590 million. Also, talking about profitable, let's jump to number 2, Frozen, and specifically Frozen names are references. Frozen's original title was going to be The Snow Queen, which is also the name of the work that the movie was based on. Pardon me here. Snedroganin, I hope I pronounced that right, aka The Snow Queen, was written by Hans Christian Andersen. When you think of that name, countless childhood stories may come into your head, but listen to it again. Hans Christian Andersen. Now, listen to 4 main characters in Frozen. Hans, Kristoff, Anna, Sven. Hans, Kristoff, Anna, Sven. Hans Christian Andersen. I rest my case. Also, the 4 names were confirmed on the Frozen IMDb to be a reference to the author. A little something snuck in there. Also, on another note, what's another thing characters Kristoff, Anna, and Sven have in common? No mothers. Which brings us to number 1, no mother characters. You may have noticed how a lot of Disney characters don't have mothers or parents, but specifically mothers. This could be because many Disney tales are based on old fairy tales where they too didn't have mothers or either parent, but this could also have been for other reasons, and Disney producer Don Hahn gave 2 more in an interview with Glamour. 2 more reasons, that is. The first reason Hahn said there wouldn't be any parents is because of plot. Most Disney movies are about growing up and accepting responsibility, and a quick way of doing that is losing your parent or both parents. An example he used was of Belle from Beauty and the Beast. She only had her father, and then her father was taken away, so she had to step up, grow up. The second explanation for no mother was because of Walt Disney's past. Walt's mother died tragically in a house that Walt bought for his parents. A carbon monoxide leak from the furnace hospitalized his father and led to his mother's death. Walt Disney was traumatized and felt personally responsible. From there, Hahn says that's why Walt steered away from mother characters in future films. I know that last one was sad, but it's important to know that it wasn't Walt's fault, and regardless of the tragedy that happened, he has and continues to impact many lives with his stories of growth.
Starting us off at number 10 is Sleeping Beauty. I still sadly haven't seen the animated movie, but I feel like everyone knows the story so well that I basically have seen the movie. I have seen Maleficent though, if that counts. You have gorgeous Aurora having the luxury to sleep for years, which I wish I had every time I had to wake up early, but I'm not a princess, so whatever, moving on. And the only way she'll wake up is with that true love's kiss. Well, the movie I've heard is pretty eventful and dramatic. I mean, it's not exactly a rom-com, but the original story it was based on is even more horrific. The original Italian story was written in the 17th century, and the princess is called Talia, not Aurora. She pricks her finger on the spindle as per usual and falls into a deep sleep. Nothing new there, but it's not charming sweet Philip who saves her, no. Far from it. It's a king, not even a prince, who comes to rescue her. So one, he's already a lot older than her and his kiss doesn't even wake her up, but instead he gathers the fruits of her love, meaning he basically rapes her while she's asleep. Fast forward 9 months later, she gives birth to twins, and one of them sucks a splinter from her finger, huge safety hazard by the way, but sure, and she finally wakes up. She then ends up falling in love with that same king who's married, and his queen orders the twins to be abducted, cooked, and then fed to the king. Thankfully she fails, and thankfully this version wasn't the animated version. At number 9 is The Little Mermaid, the princess whose hair, whether wet or dry, looks like it's in a Head and Shoulders ad for the entirety of the film. I mean seriously, who has that much volume? I'm in awe. Great hair aside, Ariel has a great heart as well. Even though the Disney version leaves her with a happily ever after as it always does, the original story by Hans Christian Andersen doesn't really follow that trope. In the original version, Ariel still trades her voice with the Sea Witch, but her punishment for failing isn't just turning back into a mermaid, it's straight up death. With every step, her feet feel like they're stepping on daggers, and even after that she still dances for Prince Eric, but to no avail. He ends up marrying another girl who he thinks saved him from the shipwreck. I mean, do your research maybe, Eric, before you marry someone? But before dying, Ariel's sisters sell their hair to bring her a dagger, saying if she kills the prince, his blood will turn her feet into fins again. But of course she can't do it, she loves him too much, and she ends up turning into sea foam at the very end. This is a perfect example of a guy leading you on and then just wasting your time. Coming in at number 8 is Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Fun fact of the day, this is actually Disney's first feature-length animated film, and if that is a well-known fact, then just disregard me trying to be knowledgeable and cool. In the Disney version, Snow White and the prince end up getting married after he awakens her with that true love's kiss, and the evil queen dies by lightning striking a cliff that she was standing on. Maybe don't stand on a cliff next time if you don't want to die? Just a suggestion, just saying. The original German story isn't too different from the animated version. Instead of asking the huntsman for Snow White's heart in a box, she asks for her liver and lungs in a box because she wants to eat them for dinner. The princess is in her glass coffin when the prince finds her, but he falls in love with her anyway even though she's technically dead, and takes her coffin away whilst doing God knows what with it and her. The apple dislodges from her throat miraculously after a year of not dislodging while she was in the coffin, and she finally wakes up. The queen has to dance at their wedding wearing hot iron shoes until she dies. Honestly, props to you, Snow White, at least you got revenge. At number 7 now is The Hunchback of Notre Dame. This is actually the second Disney movie I ever watched, and I actually used to watch it on VCR if anyone still knows what that is. I used to have to wait for the whole thing to rewind to the beginning just to watch it again, but oh my god, it was such a good film. The story itself is rife with so many issues and ups and downs and fire and death and beauty and all that is Disney, but the original is even more morbid. The original story by Victor Hugo ends well for absolutely no one. In Disney's version, Quasimodo, our resident hunchback, and Frollo both fall in love with Esmeralda, our resident gypsy, and Quasimodo ends up killing Frollo at the end. Sorry, spoiler alert in case no one's seen it already. In Victor's version, Frollo frames Esmeralda for attempted murder and she gets sentenced to hanging. Quasimodo still does push Frollo off a roof, but that's because he's laughing at Esmeralda being hung. Sicko. He then goes to her grave and refuses to leave, so much so that he actually dies of starvation at her grave. I mean, I don't want to say he died in vain, but he could have lived. Filling in on number 6 slot is Bambi. I've never seen the film and I legitimately had no idea what the story was until I had to do this video, but at least now I know. The original book is actually an adult novel that explores complex themes about man versus nature and the circle of life, and it's not really the fuzzy, heartwarming Disney movie everyone thinks it is. During Bambi's first ever walk into the woods, he sees a mouse getting brutally killed and then overhears other animals threatening to kill each other. Then later on, a hunter shoots Bambi and a different deer, and the Great Prince tells him to walk in circles in order to spread his blood, so the hunter gets confused on where the bodies will end up. At At the end of the movie, the Great Prince also shows Bambi the dead hunter to remind him that humans aren't invincible after all. Haven't watched the movie, but I hope it's not like that. At number 5 is The Fox and the Hound. Again, I didn't know anything about the plot of this film until this video, and I don't know why. I feel like this is a recurring theme. I haven't watched any of the Disney films that center around animals, but I've seen all the princess ones. I mean, what does that say about me? Well, anyway, the story is a friendship-based Tom and Jerry chase-like film wherein Copper, who becomes a hunting dog, and Chief, his owner, try and kill Todd the fox for the majority of the film, but friendship prevails. In the Daniel P. Mannix version, the fox, Todd, is raised by a hunting family, not a farmer, and then is released back into the wild. So far so good, no one's died yet. But then Todd starts taunting all the other hunting dogs as revenge, and one of them actually ends up breaking free and is hit by a train while chasing Todd. Next, Todd dies from exhaustion from the chase, and another dog also reaches his expiration, meaning he becomes too old and he also has to be shot. I just feel like 3 animals just died at once and it really could have all just been avoided. Coming at number 4 is Beauty and the Beast. Let me just get this out of the way. Animated version, loved it. Live action version, loved it even more. I never liked Emma Watson in any role but Hermione, but she was the perfect Belle. In the original fairy tale, it's not the Beast that's seen as evil. Belle's not actually an only child. She has 2 sisters, and I'd say they're the evil ones. In the original, the Beast allows Belle to go home as long as she comes back after 1 week, which are, I mean, generous conditions for a hostage. When she meets her sisters finally, they try and get her to stay home for longer by being nice to her in the hopes that the Beast would get angry and eat Belle when she returned to the castle. Belle already had bad luck with the whole being kidnapped by a beast thing, but having mean siblings was just the cherry on top. Oh, and she's also half fairy in the original, and her and the Beast turn out to be cousins. I'll just leave you with that one. Number 3 slot is Mulan, our girl proving to everyone that girls can do everything that guys can do, and sometimes even a bit better than they can. Also, you don't need to ask me twice, most of you are probably like, we didn't even ask you once. But yes, I'm absolutely stoked for the live action adaptation coming out next year, let's have it. In the film, the Hans end up defeating the Huns, and Mulan ends up saving the Emperor and wins the war, and then goes back home. In Hua, Mulan's original poem that the movie is based off of, China actually loses the war completely. The Khan from the enemy side lets Mulan live, but only if she lives with him, so naturally our quick-witted girl escapes from that situation ASAP. When she finally gets home, she learns that her dad died while she was away and her mum remarried, and then she proceeds to kill herself in order to be with her dad. Now number 2 is Cinderella. Oh my god, I legit just love Cinderella. I saw the cartoon so many times, I thought her dress was the most stunning thing ever. I was like, I'm gonna wear this to prom when I grow up. But let's not even talk about the live action version, because that was also on point. I mean, there are many origin Cinderella stories, one even has a love interest for her ugly stepsister, but there's no fun in choosing the boring origin story. The Brothers Grimm, on the other hand, had a much more bloody version. We're talking Game of Thrones red wedding level. In their version, when Prince Charming gets to Cinderella's house, her sisters both cut off some of their toes and parts of their feet in order to fit into the slipper. Pigeons swoop down to show the prince the blood because apparently he couldn't see the red blood in a transparent glass slipper, and he realizes they're phonies. Then, as if the sisters haven't been through enough, some birds come and peck out their eyes during Cinderella's wedding. I mean, I know they're not nice girls, but the Brothers Grimm literally have zero mercy. Finally, at our number 1 spot is Pinocchio. Considering I haven't seen the movie, Pinocchio is probably the Disney movie I know the least about in terms of story. Literally all I know is that his nose grows when he lies. In the film, Pinocchio and his friend Jiminy Cricket end up transforming him into a real boy, but the story's original writer Carlo Collodi had a whole different idea about what was going on. He actually created the story for Italian newspapers to show kids what could happen to them if they behaved badly. In his story, Pinocchio is naughty and cruel and is constantly tortured throughout the story for bad behavior. Jiminy Cricket is called the talking cricket in his story, and after trying to give him some good advice, Pinocchio ends up killing him with a mallet. In the original, Pinocchio gets hung and dies, but since fans loved him so much, Collodi kept him alive and just continued to torture him some more. A bit sadistic, don't you think?